Kia ora talo whanamaste, haere mai, and welcome to the Niche Cast. Big up yourself. Shout out to yourself. You're doing well. You're having a good day. You're having a crack. You're doing the best you can. And we are here in honor of Aotearoa and Aotearoa sport. We're here to just chat through some of our Aotearoa sporting notes, nuggets, bits, and bobs. Obviously, covering our big four, but sometimes we do stretch outside the big four sports, the quartet, because one of the themes of the Niche Cast and the Niche Cache is that the youngsters are awesome. Now, the youngsters across every sport are just crazy. And we will discuss a few youngsters coming up. But I'm not sure if you're aware of the athletics guy, Sam Ruthe.
I am aware of this guy.
Have
Yeah.
you been tapped into him? Because he is one of many teenagers doing some crazy shit in Aotearoa sport. So I've seen a few bits and pieces of him. I've seen him race a few times, and like they're like, "Oh, this 15-year-old dude's keeping up with the men. Oh, he's beating the men. Oh, this guy's taking over." But you actually like to cover athletics, so I'm curious what you're thinking of runner Sam Ruthe, and any more specific details because um, some stuff I said just now might have been false. It might have been true. Actual, factual. We'll see what you reckon, though. What do you reckon about Sam Ruthe?
Well, I don't think I've followed it any closer than you would have. But I've memorized the name. I've kept my eye out. He had like a photo finish with Sam Tanner at the New Zealand Championships a couple of weeks ago, which already is absolutely insane because this guy's a teenager and not like a 19-year-old teenager either. He's like a 15, 16-year-old or something. Like running times that rival Jakob Ingebrigtsen, who was like who is now currently one of the, if not the best, like 1500-meter runner in the world. And when he was he's Norwegian, that fella. When he was coming through the age grades, like he was smashing everything. He was breaking every record. And this guy's Sam Ruthe is running times that are rivaling what he was doing as a youth superstar. Um, it is youth superstar stuff, so I am reminded of like Jacko Gill smashing records as a youngster, and then it getting to where he's like good enough to qualify for Olympic finals. Like he's definitely not a bust as an athlete, but he hasn't like gone on to be what Ryan Krauser is in the shot put stuff. But like Sam Tanner was an Olympian last year, and Sam Ruthe is running time this is running dead heat against him that is already like madness. That's madness. You're not supposed to be able to do that at that age. It's crazy. I don't know enough about him to know like what other ranges he has, if he's like someone who will move up into 5,000 meters or whatever, or if he might be like the rapid type who might do 800s and 1500s like a Peter Snell back in the day. But yeah, I think when you're that good, you get to pick and choose. Like you just get to pick your favorite races, and you're going to be good at whichever one you train for and target.
We will bypass most of the Black Caps and White Ferns because they have another double header today on Tuesday the 18th, which might be impacted by rain, but we'll see how we go. So we'll steer clear of most of the Black Caps and White Ferns T20 stuff, although I am taking note that the hype around this series from myself has been parlayed into massive crowds plural for the first two games of the first double header. So if anyone needs another reminder that Kiwis love cricket, it's right there for you because that Sunday was crazy as far as the Kiwis in Christchurch showing up to watch cricket. We do have a lot of Plunket Shield later on in the podcast, so we'll put the cricketing spotlight on Plunket Shield cricket, and we'll see where the schedule falls for our bonus podcast that we do on Thursdays for the Patreon whānau and the folks with a paid Substack subscription. But I do have one nugget for you about the Black Caps. Well, it's not a nugget, it's a question. 5 New Zealand males have played all 6 T20 internationals since the end of the T20 World Cup. And I'd also highlight that most of the team who played lost the first 2 T20 games of that T20 World Cup aren't playing. So no wonder the Black Caps are better. 5 dudes played all 6 T20s since the end of the T20 World Cup last year. Who are these 5 cricketers?
Right. Well, I did edit the newsletter yesterday, so I did read it, but I also edited the whole newsletter, so I don't remember once that particular sentence. I'm trying to think. Who have they played since then? There was a Sri Lanka series. I think Bangladesh came here, and one of the games was rained off, and then they've played this one on the weekend, right? So that adds up to 6.
2 series against Sri Lanka, and this one.
Oh, was it 2 against Sri Lanka?
Yeah,
okay,
but it doesn't matter. We're just curious about the players.
Well, it matters in that it helps me frame who would have been picked in those series. So I'm saying Mark Chapman would have been one of them.
Roger that.
Would there be a chance that Zach Folks and Tim Robinson would be on that list as well?
Roger that.
On both counts? There's got to be someone more established who would have played there. Let's say, would Daryl Mitchell have gone to Sri Lanka? I have a feeling Daryl Mitchell was on that list. I think I remember him being there. Daryl Mitchell was on there? No? Okay, he must have been in a different stat. I'm remembering that wrong. I don't think he would have gone to Sri Lanka. I don't know, bloody hell. Jacob Duffy.
No.
Unlucky. I might have to pass on the rest of them because I'm running out of names.
That's all right. We got the beast, the one and only Beastie Bracewell. He's played all 6. We got Mark Chapman. We got Zachary Folks. I'm imagining it's Tim Robinson. And we've also got Mitch Hay.
Ah, yes.
So right there, we got 2 veterans, Bracewell and Chapman. But we've also got 3 dudes who are 25 years or younger who have played all 6 T20 internationals. So like me, you might have thought, oh, the Black Caps, they need to select some younger players because this is the opportunity to select younger players when everyone else is unavailable. Well, 3 young dudes have just played all 6 T20 internationals after the T20 World Cup. More importantly, after the Black Caps stunk at the T20 World Cup. Since then, 3 out of the 5 players who have played all 6 games are in their early 20s, and they've been pretty damn good. Robinson, 110 runs at a strike rate of 128. Mitch Hay is only averaging 13, but that's all right because he's got a strike rate of 148. So he's just smashing it down the order. Zach Folks, he's got 55 runs in 4 innings at a strike rate of 153. And he's also the second best bowler. He's got 9 wickets at an average of 19. So we've got a really high quality, classy opening batter in Tim Robinson. We got the next up wicketkeeper, Mitch Hay, who not only has a monster T20 strike rate, but as I love to highlight, Mitchell Hay from Canterbury, he's just got a first-class batting average of 47.8 and a T20 batting strike rate of 144. No biggie. Then we got Zach Folks, who very good all-rounder for Canterbury, and he is currently averaging 26 or less in T20 Internationals, first class, list A, and T20 bowling. So in case you have missed it, in case you've been floating upside down in the mainstream, the Black Caps refreshed their test roster. You know, we got the Rachin Ravindras, the Glenn Phillips, the Will O'Rourkes, the Nathan Smiths. All those characters have started to play test cricket. All of them have also been playing ODI cricket. And the T20 team has relied heavily on 3 youngsters who are not only playing all 6 games, but they're doing their jobs pretty nicely. So that's where the Black Caps are at. And that's furthering this theme of youngsters doing great stuff for Aotearoa sport. Hit us up on the website, theniche-case.com, where you can read about Aotearoa sport because we got the deep dives. I just finished a Plunket Shield basic information wrap-up with all the key stats that you want to know. So check that out on our website. We've also got the Flying Kiwis. We've got an all-white squad breakdown and preview for this week. Busy week of all whites footy. You can still read about the Black Caps and White Ferns because we've got relevant information there. And of course, Bailey Bentley Harpy from Kawakawa, Moriwa Jr. from Northland. He made his NRL debut for the Rabbitohs, so I've done a Kiwi NRL spotlight on him. Second Kiwi NRL debutant in 2 rounds of footy. Like, this is Aotearoa, this is what we do. So make sure you're tapped in to our website, theniche-case.com, for all the deep dives. And if you want to take your reading even further, hit us up on the newsletter team. We got a Substack, theniche-case.substack.com. We're sending that out every Monday and Thursday evening, full of Aotearoa sporting information. And we also do a couple of paragraphs each about for the paid Substack subscribers. Yesterday, I did Plunket Shield notes for every team for the paid Substack subscribers, as well as the New South Wales Cup Warriors deep dive, checking in with a lot of details that I'll touch on later on in this podcast. My comrade here, he covered Football Ferns stuff, a couple of paragraphs on the Football Ferns, a couple more All Whites notes as well, and even a little bit of Stephen Adams. That's all in the paid section of our newsletter. There's a whole lot of information, a whole lot of words typed out for the free newsletter subscribers. And we also go extra deep for the paid Substack subscribers. It's a great way to support our Mahi. Sign up as a paid Substack subscriber to fund our work, but also we drop more information, bonus section for the paid Substack subscribers. And if you're not on Substack, it's all good. You can hit us up on Patreon. You can join the Patreon whānau for a couple dollars a month. I think it's a little bit cheaper on Patreon. And that's where I will copy the full newsletter into Patreon as well. And we've also got the bonus podcast every Thursday that is uploaded to Patreon, is uploaded as part of the Substack newsletter on a Thursday. So if you want to support the Niche Case, join the Patreon whānau or sign up as a paid Substack subscriber, either or, whatever platform you're comfortable with. They both go hard in helping us do what we want to do. And if you don't care about any of that, but you do want to make a donation, you can hit us up on Buy Me a Coffee as well. And of course, if you're on the podcasting platforms, Spotify, Apple, give us a review. Hopefully 3.8 out of 5 stars or higher, I'd prefer. Just if you go 3.7, then we get a bit iffy, like it's like hurts our feelings. But if you go 3.8 or higher, it'll be much appreciated. But even a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, that is welcome as well. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and tap into all the videos on YouTube as well. Otherwise, just be here with us. Just do your best and big up yourself. Let's get a bit of mindfulness. What do you got?
Rightio. I don't know who to attribute this one to because I heard it on a podcast and they were quoting someone else and they were also paraphrasing it, so they kind of changed it a bit. So I'm just going to attribute it to the big wide world. I don't know. It's a universal idea, perhaps. And that goes, in order to become yourself, you must forget yourself.
Anytime you don't attribute it to someone, I just feel like you're making it up. I know you're not making it up, but I do like to make a joke of you making it up. And I'd prefer it if you did actually make that up. Is it like,
But then I wouldn't be forgetting myself enough, you know. I'd be contradicting uh, the own mindfulness there.
that's all good. Like you're allowed to. You don't have to be
Yeah,
perfect. Um,
sure, yeah, fair, fair.
but if you were to read my morning journal, my morning pages, you would understand that cut deep into my soul. So somehow you've just made up your mindfulness and you've just cut deep into my soul. So can you hit me one more time with the mindfulness because I've forgotten it already. Too many Aotearoa vitamins. You know what I'm saying?
Plucked it from the general unconscious. It goes, well, I have to remember it now as well because I'm working from memory here. But in
I
order
mean,
to become yourself, you must forget yourself, which I think almost works better. Well, it works better when you have both meanings, but there's yourself with one word and there's yourself as in like yourself as in two words, as in getting a little bit psychological with the technicalities, like forget yourself as in forget your identity, forget your ego, etc., etc.
yeah, that's if you're studying the English language. But I think
Yes.
the most simple way is just to you got to move on from some things of yourself. You got to move past some
Mm.
elements of yourself to become the soul elements of yourself. If you catch my drift there, but I mean to be honest, you just made up some mindfulness. It cut deep into my heart, into my being, and everyone else is going to react to it differently. That's the beauty of the mindfulness is that the bullcucker explanations we give, they might not hit other people the same way because the other people they might have their own interpretation, and that's something that is beautiful about being here on planet Earth is that we can all interpret these things differently. I have I need to like I tried to do a quick little Google search to hijack your mindfulness with some Lord of the Rings wisdom quotes because I've been listening to the Lord of the Rings audiobooks of obviously the pirate versions. Like let's keep that on the D-Lo, but have been listening to some Lord of the Rings. Haven't I haven't read the books at any stage of my life, and I've just started to dive deeper into the books through the audiobook platforms. And oh my gosh,
Had you seen the movies?
yeah, obviously, crikey,
Yeah,
like
okay. Just checking.
we're not living under a rock. We're not floating upside down on the mainstream, as Outcast used to say. There are so many quotes in Lord of the Rings that just like hit you. You're just like, okay, I'm listening to this, this kind of fantasy novel before I go to bed. I'm probably too deep into the Aotearoa vitamins. I'm drifting off. I'm not really paying attention to all the little details, all the stories, and all the bits and pieces of a great fantasy novel. And then there's just one line, one quote that just like really hits you as some profound wisdom. And maybe in the coming weeks I'll try to find some quotes that apply to me. But that is to say, anyone else, if you're into that stuff, you should have a jam of some Lord of the Rings audiobooks or just read Lord of the Rings because something that was done, 50, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, even, it's great shit. It is great shit. Someone else doing great shit as well, another youngster in Aotearoa, the one and only Jackson Ball. Not related to the big baller brand, probably not related to Lonzo Ball, Lamar Ball, and the tweaker himself, Leangelo Ball. But we do have Aotearoa's Ball brother, Jackson Ball, who is part of an exceptional young wave in the NBL this season. You listed all these dudes, all these youngsters in our newsletter yesterday, and I'll just run through them. You've got their whole performances here. So again, sign up to the newsletter because like this stuff isn't covered anywhere else. So you might as well if you love Aotearoa sport. So you've got all their stats, but I'll just list their name and age because we got a lot of dudes, and this will hammer home the point. Jackson Ball, 17 years old. Campbell Scott, 20 years old. Carter Hopoi, 18 years old. Xander Masters, 19 years old. Tama Isaac, 18 years old. You listed Jackson Ball again because he had another great performance. Campbell Scott, 20 years old. Dante Russo Nance, who feels like he's been around for 5 years. He's 20 years old. Hayden Jones, 18 years old. Lachlan Crate, 18 years old. They've all had great performances in the NBL so far. Almost a week through the start of the season. You can expand on the rest of the youngsters doing great stuff in the NBL, but I mean, I think we've got to talk about Jackson Ball once again. And if he continues to do this at the level he is doing this, we will be talking about Jackson Ball every damn Tuesday morning.
Yeah, I mean, like the list of players, a couple of, I think Campbell Scott's there twice as well, isn't he? Yeah, him and Jackson Ball are in there twice because they had 2 games and they both had 2 like influential performances. I mean, Jackson Ball's getting the obvious spotlight, but Campbell Scott is a 20-year-old, 16 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, a couple of steals against the Panthers in the first game, and then 10 points, 10 assists, double with 4 rebounds against Manawatu in their second game. Like, that's pretty nuts as well. He's bounced around a couple of teams too, so it's quite cool to see him getting a starting point guard spot there. But even just since I did that yesterday, like there was a game last night, and it was a low-scoring one between Franklin and Tauranga, which Franklin won narrowly, but for the Tauranga Whai, who did I have there last time? Carter Hopoi and Xander Masters. Well, they both scored in double figures in that game as well. In a game where their team only scored 61 points. An 18-year-old and 19-year-old still scored double figures. Like it's and then that doesn't even include, I didn't put Carlin Davison on the list, but I did mention him afterwards because he's a slightly older. I think he's 21, maybe turns 22 at the end of the year, but he's had like 2 seasons as a development player in the Aussie NBL with the Breakers. So it feels like he's maybe a step above that, but he had a massive game the other day as well. I think he scored, I'm sure I wrote it in here, 36 points for Taranaki in their first game. Like that's Colin Davison. You know, he's not a sharpshooter hanging out on the edges like, I don't know, Isaiah Leafa or Toy Smith Milner or someone who's just going to might have a game where they hit 8 3-pointers or something like that. That's Colin Davison, who attacks the rim and plays with like trampoline bounce in his heels, and he did hit a few 3-pointers though in this one. This is a guy as well who a couple of years ago people would have said like, you know, incredible athlete, but doesn't really have a jump shot. Like, it's pretty wonky. But the extent to which he seems to have improved in that regard as well is wild. And yeah, from like Tom Isaac's on that list as well twice because he scored 10 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists against the Fire, and then he also had 23 points on 8 of 14 shooting, better than 50%, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, couple blocks, surprisingly, against Nelson. So like, these guys aren't just, you know, that's what is it, three of those players that I listed there have had multiple big performances already in their first couple of games. Like, it's not just one-off stuff, which is obviously that was the risk with Jackson Ball, wasn't it? It was like 40 points in the season opener, 15 of 19 shooting, 9 rebounds, 4 assists. Like, it was unreal stuff. But it was also against the Indian Panthers, who are probably going to be the worst team in the competition. And on top of being the worst team in the competition, they didn't even have their full team. So there was like a reserve, there was a bunch of ring-ins filling them out for them. So it was like a reserve team for the worst team. So you've got, he had to keep a natural asterisk on that one, just in terms of the level of competition that he was up against. Well, a few days later, he didn't score 40 points against Manawatu, starring Corey Webster, who himself scored, I think, 32 points. That was the Dante Russo Nance 25-point game as well. So a pretty serious team with like one of New Zealand's all-time greats and one of our best up-and-coming players who's a couple of years older than Jackson Ball there. Pretty solid, step up from what they were in the first game. Jackson Ball scores 36 points with 8 rebounds and 3 more assists as a 17-year-old. turned 17 like last Monday. So he's 17 in 8 days or something at the time of recording here, which unreal stuff. And yeah, I guess I don't know, the Panthers tax wasn't as drastic as we thought. Like that's we had to wait and see what he'd look like against a more serious team, against a more prepared team. He got a more serious, more prepared team. I don't think Manawatu are going to be on the level that like Canterbury, Wellington, Auckland should be. But they're a pretty solid team that'll be competing for, top half of the table, especially if you've got Corey Webster there. You can win any old like you can win any game on any day because he might just go wild. And Jackson Ball still does that against them. This is not normal. It's not normal, but also looking at this trend of the fact that it's not just him, of all these teenagers doing extremely good stuff to start this NPL season. The fact that it's not just him means that, yes, it's like, I mean, no, it's not normal, but also it's maybe closer to normal than it used to be because he's not alone in this. But Jackson Ball, I've learned, has already committed to go to Wisconsin University, the Badgers, where one of the assistant coaches at Wisconsin University is none other than Kirk Penny, who, if you're looking at a guy who's shaping up to be, one of our top wing prospects, I don't think you can possibly come up with a better Kiwi mentor for him to work under than Kirk Penny. Like that's kind of perfect. That's extremely good recruitment on that count.
You mentioned he's a wing, but is he like leading the plays for his team? Is he directing traffic? Or is he just kind of chilling until the opportunity presents itself? Then he does some crazy shit. Like, how does Jackson Ball play basketball?
Bit of both, because Campbell Scott is the main ball handler, but Jackson Ball definitely gets his turn, and it was something that was obvious, maybe more so in the Panthers game because of the team he was up against, but you still saw it against Manawatu where it's like he can just hang out as the free man and hit his 3-pointers on those catch and shoot moments, but he's also pretty strong and athletic for his age, and he can just barge through and he'll finish at the rim. He can do a little bit of mid-range stuff. He plays well in transition because he's quick and keen and looking to get out. He can pass the ball around. You've seen he's got 4 assists in the first game, 3 assists in the second game. So he's not just like the ball comes to him and that's the end of the play, whether he shoots or not. Like he can be part of the sort of flowing moves when making that extra pass, all that stuff. So yeah, I think it's maybe the thing that stood out the most beyond just the raw numbers is how much variety he seemed to have. Like what a well-rounded player he seemed to be for someone so young. And he was like, because he was part of the under-17 World Cup side last year, which who else was in that team from the fellas that I've mentioned? Hayden Jones was, and I think Lachlan Crate, of those guys who have scored like 10 plus points in a game already. A couple of the other ones were slightly older, like Kata Hopoi and Tama Isaac were not under 17 World Cup last year, but they were under 18 Asia Cup, I think. In fact, I think Tama Isaac actually made the All-Star 5 at that tournament. So potentially those two squads will be combining for, I can't remember if it's under 19s or under 20s. It might be under 19 World Cup. Whenever that is, it might be end of this year, it might be next year, which would be pretty crazy because the thing about Jackson Ball at the under 17 World Cup last year is he was one of their solid players, but he wasn't the star player. The star player was Oscar Goodman. And that under 18 side, Tama Isaac wasn't the star player. Well, he was the star player as it was, but he wasn't the star player in the squad. It's just that Julius Halefanua was in that squad but didn't actually play. I think he sort of got withdrawn a little bit to allow him to focus on making a good decision with his what do you call it, with his recruitment stuff, which seems like he has set himself up for college. Let me check the actual minutes here. So as far as minutes played, in fact, Jesus, as far as minutes played, Jackson Ball played 59 minutes of that tournament. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 guys in the squad, and he played the 11th most minutes. So he wasn't even, it's not even that he wasn't one of the stars at that tournament. Like he wasn't even in the main rotation. Hayden Jones was, Oscar Goodman, Lachlan Craig, Troy Plumley, James Matthews, Jackson Kiss were kind of the main guys. Bit of Hunter Taratana, bit of Ihaka Crate. And then, yeah, Jackson Ball was just one of a very good squad. And now he's doing this. So if he's capable of doing that, think about how many other players were in that team and around that environment who also are probably capable of doing pretty similar things themselves as they blossom into their senior careers.
Steven Adams he's up to his neck in his senior basketballing career, and he's now played 6 games with 10 or more minutes in those 6 games. He did miss a game against Dallas in his not the most recent game, the game before that, but in games he has played, he's played 10 minutes in his last 6 games. Houston Rockets have now won their last 6 games, including the game Steven Adams missed. And Steven Adams, he's got the old positive net rating in all 6 in the last 5 wins that Steven Adams has played. He's got a positive net rating. And in the paid Substack section, you offered some stats about Steven Adams playing alongside Alperen Sengun. You've got a bunch of stats here. I'll try and find the simplest one to lay this out.
Net ratings, I reckon. The offensive, defensive net ratings on that one.
Is that the cheeky plus 47.9 net rating?
That would be the one. I don't know where I wrote it on my one here.
Or maybe you've got some rebounding stuff, because the Rockets have had 86.2% of available defensive rebounds and 50% of the offensive rebounds when Adams and Sengun are in the same lineup. You've also... Wait, are you saying that the Steven Adams Sengun 2-man duo is better than the Van Vliet Holiday 2-man duo? Is that what you're saying?
By a lot. Like
right.
the net rating of offensive rating with Sengun and Adams both on the court at the same time. There's 121.5 points per 100 possessions. A little bit like around a good NBA lineup per 100 possessions is maybe like 105 to 110. They're at 121 points per 100 possessions with a defensive rating of 73.6. So that's where you get the net rating is just the difference between those plus 47.9. Only done 68 minutes together. There's only been 13 games where they've shared the court, but most of those are recently. There's only a couple instances in the first half of the season. Most of those are within the past month where they've started to flex that lineup a lot more. And yeah, the next best 2-man duo by net rating for the Rockets is Fred VanVleet, Aaron Holiday, plus 27 in 140 minutes. So there's a 20 that they're plus 27, and then there's another 20 points per 100 possession net rating difference to get to the top one, which is Steven Adams and Alperen Sengun. That's discounting the ones that's only like 5 minutes kind of thing, obviously. But yeah, and those defensive 86.2% of available defensive rebounds and 50% of available offensive rebounds is beyond incredible. And again, this is small sample size, but it's a small sample size that's growing by the game because they are starting to play a whole lot more together. And because it's been so completely dominant, well, you have to see it more often, don't you? Like, you have to keep rolling with that because whatever it is, it works. If there might be reservations about defensive, flexibility, well, 73.6 points per 100 possession against in 68 minutes with them. They're plus minus, just the raw plus minus, and those 68 minutes is plus 75. So in 68 minutes with those two guys on the court together, the Rockets have outscored opponents by 75 points. It is crazy stuff.
And of course, you might have seen Steven Adams get into a bit of a tussle with Mason Plumlee, which is funny for a variety of reasons. But I'm just watching it back now. This is one-way traffic. Like, Steven Adams gets the underhooks under both arms, wraps him up, and drags Plumlee down on top of him. That's how staunch Steven Adams is. He doesn't care about falling backwards with a bloke on top of him. He drags Plumlee down on top of him. He doesn't care that he's got another massive human landing on top of him. He drags him down, and he doesn't give a shit. Like this is peak Steven Adams. Somehow he got ejected as well as Plumlee, because Plumlee was doing all sorts of niggly shit there. But
Well, he elbowed him in the throat like right before, which
that's the one. But this is extra fascinating because old Stevie, he helped Plumlee a few seasons ago.
yeah.
He gave him a soft landing, and there's other instances. I've seen a few clips of Plumlee just being a bit of a dick to Steven Adams, even though Steven Adams, the humble Kiwi, he's helped Plumlee. And then he just dominated him. Like he manhandled him, wrapped him up. Like it's basically Mason Plumlee. He's the fullback. He's returning a kick. And then, as I've said about the Warriors at their best and many good NRL teams, what do? They wrap him up, they fold him up, they put him down. And that's what Steven Adams did against Mason Plumlee. So obviously, Steven Adams won this little tussle. Obviously, Mason Plumlee's a dick. What says you?
Yeah, Mason Plumlee, 0 post-contact meters. He wasn't going anywhere there. Yeah, it's a weird one where, I don't know, maybe Mason Plumlee just didn't value his basketball career enough to respect the way that Steven Adams saved it by not letting him break his neck when he played against him with the Thunder back in the day. That time, he turned down an open layup just to catch him so he didn't flip over backwards. Because there was that other one when he was playing with Memphis where Plumlee like shoves him in the back on the like blindsided him and then throws the ball at him when he's on the ground as well, which I think one of the other Memphis guys runs up, grabs the ball, and then hurls it back at Plumlee afterwards, which is nice. The teammates. Steven Adams is always out there backing up his teammates and breaking up fights for them. There was a rare instance where it worked the other way around, and someone else got to, one of the other teammates got to jump in and help Steve-O out. The main thing I took away from that, though, is just the NBA's strange definition of like words like fight and scrum and just even like the altercations and whatever. It just seemed like Plumlee made a dirty play, trying to be a tough man, trying to muscle up against a stronger guy, made a dirty play. Adams reacted. They both fell over, and then like the entirety of the benches from both sides and a bunch of security guards all run on and just crowd over and get in the way. So and then they eject them both for what was probably just double technical might have been fine, like one each way. Instead, they sent them both to the sheds. It was a strange, like, I don't know. I think that would have been handled very differently on a rugby league field, is what I'll say. And I think probably handled differently and also handled probably more maturely and more conveniently.
You could have said any other sport as long as you mention a different country and it would have been handled differently, because we do know that America is a little bit goofy. And
correct.
I was just had a moment of gratitude for Aotearoa when I was watching the press conference for the Warriors versus Manly Seagulls post-game, and Andrew Webster talking about the Las Vegas experience. He said, getting home to some beautiful nature, some fresh air, and a great country was awesome. Like, mate, that's just what we want. We just want a bit of gratitude for Aotearoa, and of course, returning to Aotearoa, returning to Mount Smart Stadium, the greatest stadium in Auckland. So the Warriors have a win over the Manly Seagulls, 36-16, and I'm still in the learning phase about Warriors Rugby League as far as some key foundations of their footy. Like, we've got stuff that's been embedded by Andrew Webster. Like, we've seen 2 and a bit seasons of rugby league for the Warriors under Andrew Webster now. So obviously there's a general stylistic, like how the Warriors play their rugby league generally, but I'm just still curious learning how some details about how this team in 2025 is playing their rugby league. But as I thought through it, there is this emerging aspect of Warriors Rugby League where it's not all about Dimitri Faimonga and Leka Halasima coming off the bench. But I use that as an entry point into breaking down Warriors Rugby League because Webster's basically deployed them for 20 minutes or less in the first two games. Now, that's a little bit annoying because you're like, damn, these dudes can impact the game. Like, these dudes can change the course of, a slumpy first half against the Raiders, or they could up the ante late in the first half and do some good stuff there. But in both games, Webster has used them late and they've played less than 20 minutes. First and foremost, that is part of a greater trend across the whole Warriors system, where youngsters are being slowly developed. We've talked about that in recent weeks, especially when you're looking through New South Wales Cup, Jersey Flag, SG Ball. There is a trend of like, yeah, you played New South Wales Cup last year, but you're going to start the season Jersey Flag. Yeah, you did play Jersey Flag. Maybe you even played New South Wales Cup last year for a few games, but you're starting there in SG Ball. They are very intentionally, I believe, under Andrew McFadden, they are slowing the development process down, which I think, given the history of the Warriors and how quickly youngsters have progressed through the Warriors and then disappeared, I think this is actually a good thing. And I've talked about it previously. I do believe McFadden and Webster, because they've been around the Warriors before, right? Like they were there when all the youngsters were playing a few under-20s games, then going straight into the NRL. So I think that is a deliberate trend across all grades, and it's evident in the NRL level. But the NRL team, it seems more of a strategy, a game plan to bring on Vaimunga and Halasima late in the game, where they just increase the tempo after, 60 minutes, generally 55 minutes of grinding rugby league. None of that actually looked good against the Raiders, obviously, but we're talking about the Seagulls game where you've got a Warriors team that has individual runners who all run a bit differently. Like you've got Tuivasa-Sheck and his footwork. You got Tain Tuapiki and his speed and getting between defenders. But his try, he showed that burst of power that he has, bursting through the defensive line of the Seagulls. Sean's Nickel Croxley's bouncing around every which way. Pompey kind of ambles into the defensive line. Then he's got his floating step that is tricky to handle for NRL defenders. Then you go through the forward pack, and what does Capewell do? He's bouncing. He's lumbering, bit of a goofy running style, but if he's cutting back, he's got a fend, he's got an offload, he's got footwork. Marata Niakore, what does he do? Runs it straight. He's running the inside ball, he's running the outside ball. Then you've got like Aaron Clark's speed, Fisher Harris, all those dudes, a little bit of passing involved. But the individual running styles and how they run, where they run, then you combine that with like the plays they have to run. So yes, there is the one pass hit ups that can be a bit tedious, but you've also got the Fisher Harris angling his runs out to the edges. You've got Capewell and Niakore running back inside. All of that is just working over the defenders. This is basically Panthers Rugby League. It's like Pam's Panthers. The Pam's brand, home brand, whatever you want to say. Like, obviously, the Warriors are pretty shit compared to the Panthers, but it's the same general premise where you're working over all these angles, you're challenging the defenders for time and time again. The frustrating thing for the Warriors is that they aren't as effective at it, so if you don't cash in at the end, it looks kind of stink. But if you're doing that for 55 minutes, 60 minutes, then suddenly Leka Halasima's on the field as an edge forward. Suddenly Vaimunga's playing through the middle, and what usually happens is Mitchell Barnett will go to left edge. Then you've got these very powerful, very mobile, skillful forwards who can impact the game, and they have consistently impacted games. Like Leka Halasima impacted the game on his debut against the Bulldogs. impact is an understatement. Every time Vaimonga enters the field, he's impacting the game. And what did I think? The against the Seagulls, it was, let me check the score when these guys went on, because it was a pretty close game when these dudes went on. It was 24-16, and the Warriors ended up winning 36-16. So the Warriors, I think the Seagulls had just scored the try where Garrick flicks it back. Then Vaimonga and Halasima, either way, they score that try. Vaimonga and Halasima on the field. Then the Warriors score more tries. They finish the game off. So as far as identifying some key aspects of Warriors Rugby League in 2025, that is something that I've noticed that is very important. Mainly because you're I just want these dudes playing more. Why aren't they playing more? But the only game time they're getting is at the end of the game. And that against the Raiders, the game was already over. So it's what are we doing? Against the Seagulls, the game is in the balance. Then their energy enters the arena against tired bodies. Bang, you've got you have a good win. And the Warriors score points late in the game, which my intuition's telling me that is combined with big minutes for the starters early in the game. So Fisher Harris, he played 31 minutes straight. Usually, a lot of teams, they're rotating their props 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Fisher Harris played 25 minutes, then 27 minutes in his second shift. Barnett, 52 minutes straight. Aaron Clark, 30 minutes straight to start the game. So the three starting middle forwards all played at least 30 minutes to start the game. Thankfully, mad respect to the bro, Jackson Ford. Thankfully, he's coming off the bench. But he's just a good dude to have balancing out Vaimonga and Halasima because he's a workhorse. So the good thing about Ford is he's a workhorse doing the hard mahi alongside the power and the pizzazz of the young forwards. Even Dylan Walker, he's a skill player. He's a small forward. So there's a fine line between relying on Jackson Ford too much and using Jackson Ford, to my mind, in a wise way. And against the Raiders, there was a bit too much of Jackson Ford. Against the Seagulls, we got a good balance. Dylan Walker only played 25 minutes. That's less minutes than he has been playing predominantly last season. So I think Warriors fans should expect Barnett, Fisher, Harris, and Clark. Hopefully Clark keeps starting. But at least Barnett and Fisher Harris, Warriors fans should expect them to be playing most of the first half. 30 minutes, that's most of the first half. That's 3/4 right there. And then expect the youngsters to come on later in the game, especially midway through the second half. That seems to be a key trend that the Warriors are doing this season. And it's a good way. Not only does Andrew Webster believe that that's a good way to win NRL games, but it's a good way to develop Vaimonga and Halasima. Because it keeps their role real simple, assuming this is something that is happening and it's not just me off the Aotearoa vitamins just making shit up, but it keeps their role simple and slowly establishes game time for them. Now, again, we're not trying to rush youngsters through this Warriors development pipeline, so that fits into that theme as well. The best player for the Warriors this year, to me, is Aaron Clark. Again, thankfully, he started the game. And, bro, he's fast, he's powerful, and he's aggressive. He can pass. He is a good passer because he came up through the Warriors system as a half, coming out of Manurewa, and debuted as a hooker. Now he's a small forward, starting games in the middle. So he can do the passing required, and he had 11 passes compared to 1 pass for Barnett, 5 passes to Fisher Harris. So he's doing that job. But he's also very fast. He's very aggressive. And the Luke Metcalf style of running is like very direct and very fast. He doesn't like kind of bounce across field looking for a gap and then steps and then turns on the speed. He just kind of gets the ball, finds his gap, sees the gap, bursts through it. That's how Metcalf runs, and that's how Aaron Clark plays. So there's a lot more direct footy with Aaron Clark on the field. And I was thinking, like, throughout this Panthers dynasty, everyone's been talking like, this team has the best props. And then the Panthers would beat them in the grand final. Oh, this other team's got the best props. They got the best props duo. And they wouldn't make the grand final, and the Panthers would win the grand final. So it's like, yeah, you can talk about like who's the best props. Yeah, you got this guy, you got that guy. He's the best prop. He's done this. He's doing that. James Fisher-Harris and Moses Leota won 4 consecutive NRL grand finals. And they came up against props who were apparently better than them. So yeah, there's other players in the Panthers playing at a high level, but we all know where rugby league, how wins, where winning footy starts in rugby league. It's the big boppers up the guts. And Fisher-Harris and Leota dominated opposition forward packs in 4 consecutive grand finals, to be honest, across 4 consecutive seasons. Now I'm watching the Warriors with Fisher-Harris, Barnett, and Aaron Clark. And it's the same feeling. The Warriors aren't as good as the Panthers. They're the Pams Panthers, which is actually quite deep because, you know, you got Webster, you got the style of footy, you got the junior pipeline, like all of that stuff. They are genuinely the Pams Panthers. But it's like, okay, yeah, you've got a better prop. I don't want to throw names in. I don't want to take shots. I just want to say, like, yeah, you got a better prop. You got a better prop combo. You got better middle forwards. But if you give me Fisher-Harris, Barnett, and Aaron Clark, I'm happy. Like, I'm not like, oh, these guys are shit compared to the other team. I'm like, I actually kind of like these dudes against any middle forward combination. And to me, it's one of the best middle forward trios I can remember the Warriors having. Because Fisher-Harris, we all know what he's done. I just referenced it. But he's still got that presence in the middle for the Warriors. Biggest thing for Fisher-Harris is, well, not the biggest thing, but something I've noticed, especially at the Warriors, is his squeeze. This is very weird, but you watch Fisher-Harris, any tackling situation, he is squeezing the shit out of the dude with the ball. Like, I'm not taking the piss. I'm genuinely saying he squeezes them. So you imagine, get into your third eye, dude runs up to Fisher-Harris, someone's around the legs, all good. Fisher-Harris is up top, wraps him up, and he is squeezing them like an anaconda. And then you got Mitchell Barnett, who's pretty crazy. He's dynamic. His presence is just as hearty as Fisher-Harris. But then you got Clark, who is also real fast for a middle forward and very aggressive. So I'm not saying these 3 dudes are the best middle forward trio in the NRL. Because anyone from Australia is going to say, nah, this guy, this team, that team. That's cool, fine. But I'm happy with this middle forward trio against any middle forward trio in the NRL. It does change when Jackson Ford's starting, though. Like, there is a big difference between Aaron Clark and Jackson Ford. But like, I felt like those dudes controlled the middle against the Seagulls. And again, that's the most important area of the field for rugby league. And they just give me a good feeling. You got any points? Because I don't want to just keep talking for 50 minutes straight. But you got anything you want to fire off?
Well, my main observation from that game was just a 4-word observation, which you kind of already covered, which is that Aaron Clark is awesome. Like, I thought he was fantastic in that game. But the like, I don't know, was that what changed, do you think, between a terrible performance in week one and a very good performance in week two? Was it just as much as like you get Aaron Clark in there, you get a bit more energy in the forward pack, get a bit more of a roll on and everything flows from there, or was there more to the story than that?
Uh, it's there's not more to the story. It's just a different story, and it's not that complicated. They were just like more intense, better attitude, more effort, and that is rugby league. Like you can go deep into the stats. Some stats are better, some stats are the same, some stats are worse. And it's like, well, oftentimes in rugby league, you just win the game by having more energy than the opposition. And that's what the Warriors did, which isn't surprising because they came back to Mount Smart and it was a big occasion at Mount Smart. So, like, the most important observation that I probably should have mentioned at the start of this yarn was that the spirit is there. The Warriors' soul is there. There's something there. There is the mana, the wairoa, whatever you want to call it. The Warriors still have something there within them. Like, I didn't see like super slick clinical attacking movements. I didn't see a dominant defensive performance, even though they doubled the Seagulls score. Like the Seagulls shape ripped the Warriors apart a few times. So there wasn't necessarily. This goes back to like what I'm identifying in the Warriors style of play. Like I didn't see, okay, now the Warriors, they've just like shown razzle dazzle shape. The Warriors implemented this defensive scheme and it worked. No, the Warriors, like rugby league is kind of simple in the sense that the Warriors just had better effort, better intensity, a better attitude. They played faster. They were more physical. And that won them the game. And that will win them many games in the NRL. Because in the NRL, if you don't show up, like you might not show up with 10 out of 10 physicality, intensity, attitude all the time. But to win games in the NRL, you got to be playing at least 8 out of 10 intensity every week. Because if you dip down to 6 or 7, you will lose that game. It's one of these sports where like you don't necessarily need all like yeah sure some games some matchups whatever it is there will be tactical decisions, tactical plays, tactical initiatives that go a long way to deciding the result, but the main thing that decides results in the NRL is your effort, your energy, your intensity, and that was the biggest difference to the Raiders. And like these dudes don't necessarily lead the effort and intensity, but the two guys that I watch in catching a vibe on how the Warriors are playing, Shans Nickel-Croxtar and Wade Egan. They're my measurement. They're my barometer. They're my vibe check for how the Warriors are playing. And against the Raiders, Nickel-Croxtar averaged a whopping 6.3 meters per run. Against the Seagulls, he averaged 8.5 meters per run. That is a massive factor. Like, it's obviously there's so much more to it, but if Nickel-Croxtar's making meters, which he always does, like, you could say Roger Tuivasa-Sheck should be the fullback, but Nickel-Croxtar has had, like, he was the Raiders fullback in a grand final run. Like, Nickel-Croxtar is not a bad fullback. Nickel-Croxtar is one of the sneaky best fullbacks in the NRL. And it just doesn't look like he's that powerful. It doesn't look like he's got that good of footwork. It doesn't look like he's that fast, but he usually gets his job done as a running fullback. He's a good, strong defender. Usually he's safe under the high ball, good mopping up the kick. So he does all that effort area stuff and defensive execution at fullback. But he is really important as far as starting the sets, getting between defenders, a little bit of footwork, that when you combine that with Tuivasa-Sheck, when you combine that with Taintua Piki, then you're starting to build out three runners who are very hard to tackle. But Nickel Clockstar, if he had 20 runs versus the Sea Eagles. That is solid Nickel Clockstar running Mahi. And if he's just doing his job in that sense, he doesn't need to do 10 meters per run, but 8 meters per run, 9 meters per run. That tells me that the Warriors are starting their sets in a good position, and usually Nickel Clockstar will have another run. So maybe they kick to the winger. Nickel Clockstar might then have a run early in the set. He might have another run later in the set. They might kick to Nickel Clockstar. He runs that up. Then he's having another run mid-set. And if his running is on point, that's very dangerous for the Warriors, because then you add in Wade Egan. Wade Egan, when he was selected for round one, oh my gosh, Wade Egan, he's always injured. He always gets hit in the head. What's he doing? Can he play 80 minutes? He's just played 2 games of 80 minutes. He's all right. He can play 80 minutes. But most importantly, Wade Egan's had 10 meters per dummy half run in both games. 6 dummy half runs for 10.3 meters per run versus the Raiders. 9 dummy half runs, 10.1 meters per run against the Sea Eagles. Wade Egan's not fast. We talked about this last week. But he's very crafty, slow-mo, dummying this way, engaging the defenders around the ruck. And if Wade Egan's playing at a very high level or a very solid level like Nickel Clockstar, it sets up everything else for the Warriors. So Nickel Clockstar, it's all about doing his job at a fullback, starting the sets, speed and a little bit of speed and power around the ruck, but just getting between the defenders. That sets up how the Warriors get downfield, because then you bring in Tuivasa-Sheck, you bring in Tuapiki. Wade Egan around the ruck sets up everything else that everyone else wants to talk about, right? Because they're Luke Metcalf was the whole Warriors were bad against the Raiders. But apparently people were talking shit about Luke Metcalf. And then suddenly Luke Metcalf's good against the Sea Eagles. But again, the whole team was better against the Sea Eagles. This is part of the halfback fetish. Everyone wants to put this massive responsibility on the halfback. This isn't America. This isn't the NFL, the quarterback. No, you've got actual other team members who hold just as much value as the halfback. Yes, I understand the halfback's an important position, but the responsibility of every other player is far beyond what many media people make it out to be, and far beyond the quarterback NFL status. The halfback can only do what he can do. Actually, like the NFL, quarterback can only do what he can do if he's got a good offensive line, if he's got blockers, if he's got wide receivers, if he's got a running back. Luke Metcalf can only do what he can do if the Warriors are getting downfield, laying the platform. Wade Egan's engaging the defenders around the ruck to give Luke Metcalf a bit of space. Chanel Harris-Davida's doing his kicking and passing on the left side of the field. Everyone's doing their jobs around Luke Metcalf. But that goes back to the Sean Johnson factor, right? 2023, I was talking about everything except Sean Johnson, because everything else was awesome, and Sean Johnson was just doing his job. Funnily enough, 2024 is a shit year because most of the Warriors' top 17 was pretty shit. And Sean Johnson was shit. Sean Johnson wasn't the savior. He wasn't the reason for whatever the Warriors are up to. And we've just seen 2 weeks where apparently all the spotlight was on Luke Metcalf. No, it's like the Warriors as a team were shit against the Raiders, and as a team they were good against the Seagulls. But this goes back to my barometers where the thing to watch out for is Nickel Clockstar. It's Wade Egan, because that sets up everything else. But even putting those two on a pedestal, like those are just things that I'm looking for, that I'm watching out for. But of course, you need the big boppers doing the physical work. You need everyone else doing their job as well. So it's just, and that goes back to what you're saying about the difference in these two games. It was just better attitude, better intensity, better effort. And to me, that's a Mount Smart factor. That's a signs of life factor for the Warriors. So, yes.
Yeah, and it is the NRL as well, where like the Roosters can have a bad loss in week one and everyone thinks they're heading for nothing but disaster, and then they beat the Panthers in week two. And the Seagulls themselves were amazing in week one. Probably they're coming away from this game at Mount Smart saying similar things to what the Warriors were saying about the Vegas trip. So not sure that the fluidity and the full 100% capacity was there from Manly either, sort of thing. And a lot of that is because the Warriors, got on top and didn't let them do that. That's part of it. Same because the Raiders did the same thing to the Warriors in week one. But it is a notoriously like volatile league, the NRL, where if you score 50 points in a victory one week, you got to watch out the next week because there's a good chance you're going to get upset the next time around. Unless, and likewise, if you get thrashed one week, you might well win the next week. Like that's often the humiliation is all it takes to turn things around. Unless apparently you're the Parramatta Eels at the moment, they might be an exception to the volatility rule. But yeah, Dylan Brown may have made a good business decision in that regard.
Well, the thing that also impressed me was like Mount Smart needs to snatch the soul out of the opposition. Regardless of who you are, where you're coming from, your form guide, if you come to Mount Smart, you're going to get smashed and some bad shit will happen to you, bad juju. What happened for the Seagulls? Little hamstring niggle for Tommy Turbo. Daly Cherry Evans. Crippled back. Old Gordy getting into it with the fans. So when
Sin been in there as well,
exactly. Jazz Tavanga, couple of bottle throws, getting a bit ruckus, bit rowdy. Couldn't handle the jandal. If you come to Mount Smart, the Warriors need, I don't know, like the Warriors need to do their bit, right? The Warriors need to smash their opponent. They need to wrestle them, grapple them, fold them up, put them on their backside, drive them back, which they always do well. Early in the set, drive them back, fold them up, win the ruck speed, win the physical battle. Everything from there kind of takes care of itself. Wade Egan, Nickel Clockstar, runners, shape, all that stuff. But physically, the Warriors need to do their part. Then, especially the night games, you let Mount Smart does its part. You let the aura, the mana of Mount Smart work against the opposition because it happens. And that's why like wins at Mount Smart for opposition teams are very impressive to me. Like the Melbourne Storm, they'll come to Mount Smart, they'll win. Easy. That's what's impressive about the Storm. And the Roosters, I think they had a real tough win in the rain against the Warriors last season. Maybe the season before. That's impressive. But we saw it against the Seagulls. The Mount Smart factor, it snatched the soul out of the Seagulls. Like they're all high and mighty. They're all having a good time. They come to Mount Smart, nothing works for them. They had a few good shape moments, but there's a lot of niggle. There's bad juju. There's bad vibes. People getting in trouble. People getting injured. That's Mount Smart. And Haven't quite seen that for Auckland FC, the Blue Riders, just yet. But they'll get there. I think they'll get there. You did reference some other... no, let me do the New South Wales Cup. Then we'll expand out to the NRL. Because New South Wales Cup, they also had a win over the Seagulls, 31-20. The New South Wales Cup, they've now won their first 2 games. And it's only 2 games, but these 2 games are part of the most important trend for the Warriors. The most important thing for the Warriors is that the Warriors in New South Wales Cup are in their 3rd season of winning rugby league. 2023, they finished 3rd, 14 wins, 9 losses, 1 draw. Same record to finish 4th in 2024. Now they're 2-0 to start this season. This is important for a variety of reasons. One, a lot of youngsters playing New South Wales Cup over the last 3 years. So Leotawa, Vaimonga, Halasima, Jacob Laban, Tanistawa Smith, Irioromia Toiava. They have all played a lot of games in New South Wales Cup in these three seasons, and they're winning. They're winning against the other fringe NRL players in the New South Wales Rugby League competition. Zion Mai'uu is the only kind of local junior to leave the Warriors New South Wales Cup team, and the Warriors have won both games without him. Like, they're doing all right without him. It's all good. So the youngsters are the core. Shout out to Kailani Going, because he's also played all 3 seasons, and he has a winning record as a Warriors New South Wales Cup player. But there's been a lot of turnover of more senior players in that New South Wales Cup team. Ronald Volkman, he was in the 2023 team. You've got Braden Williami, James Gavey, Michael Seo, Maya Sands, Eden Ackland, Ben Farr, Setu Tu, Paul Roach. They've all come and left the Warriors New South Wales Cup team, and the Warriors have kept winning without them. Let's take that further. Here's the spine for the last game the Warriors played in New South Wales Cup of each season. So 2 losses in the finals, then the win over the Seagulls. 2023, Setu Tu at fullback, Ben Farr, Ronald Volkman, Paul Roach, halves and hooker. Last season, Taintua Piki at fullback, Luke Hanson, Paul Roach, Makai Tafua. Against the Seagulls, Geronimo Doyle, Tamaira Martin, Tanaboy, Samuel Healy. Those are completely different spines for each year, and the Warriors keep winning. So there's a core group of young players, there's a lot of departures, and the Warriors keep winning. That reflects very well on the young players, on the club, and what they're doing throughout their pipeline. This season, we've had Kalis Fatialofa has got more game time as an edge forward. I think he's an Otara junior coming out of De La Salle College. He had a fend of doom on Brandon Wakeham for his try on the weekend. Then we've also got Toby Crosby coming off the bench, stepping up from Jersey Flegg last season. Again, anyone who's seen Toby Crosby's highlights, this dude's now just coming off the bench in New South Wales Cup. Morgan Harper's been decent, playing on the wing. Obviously, like I mentioned, the spines across these 3 seasons. This year's spine is the best. Tamaira Martin, Tana Boyd in the halves. They could play NRL right now. But then we get to the best player in New South Wales Cup. So Aaron Clark has been my best player for the NRL team. Pre-season NRL footy. Pre-season New South Wales Cup footy, the best player for the Warriors in reserve grade is Samuel Healy. the hooker. 22 years old, youngster. He is awesome. Good passer, good runner out of dummy half, but he did get the ball a few times against the Seagulls, like just in the back line. Like a pass, then Sam Healy gets the ball, and he's bouncing all over the show. He's got footwork, he's got a fend. He's a big body. Like, I'm fine with Wade Egan playing 80 minutes. And yes, if worst case scenario happens, they'll have cover. Someone else can play hooker, but that's a worst case scenario. But Samuel Healy will play NRL for sure this year. Guaranteed. And he is awesome. He's got a bit more speed and a bit more size than Wade Egan. But he's a better dummy half than, what do we have? Paul Roach in 2023. And Makai Tafua is a very good dummy half, but he's in Jersey Flegg. Jacob Auloa, very good dummy half. He's in Jersey Flegg. Both of them have played a lot of New South Wales Cup. But they're starting this year in Jersey Flegg, and the Warriors brought in Sam Healy to do a job as the starting dummy half in New South Wales Cup. He's starting ahead of Freddie Lussick, but when Lussick's on the field with Sam Healy. So sometimes Lussick is playing more of the small forward. Sometimes Sam Healy's just floating around. He's awesome. And he's doing a great job in New South Wales Cup. But again, like, this is just a really good New South Wales Cup setup. Like, guys who have played in all 3 seasons: Moala Graham Telfer, Ed Cossey, Tom Ale, Bunty Afoa, Jacob Laban, Freddie Lussick, Stowers Smith. Stowers Smith is an awesome emerging forward. Kailani Going. Leotawa, Vaimonga, and Halasima have moved up to the NRL level, and they look comfy at the NRL level. These are the foundations of the NRL team in New South Wales Cup. All the junior stuff builds up to New South Wales Cup, but the foundations of the NRL team are in New South Wales Cup. And most of the New South Wales Cup team that has started or been top 17 in the first 2 games, most of them could step into the NRL very easily. Most of them have already played NRL. Most of them are NRL caliber. And that is the depth available to the Warriors at the moment. You did mention some of the other goings-ons in the NRL. There was a very good, impressive victory for the Roosters. Again, I kind of felt like I was part of it because did react strongly to the Warriors' loss versus the Raiders, but it is a reminder just to chill out. It's a long season. Like, you're going to have your ups and downs. But the Roosters did have a good win over the Panthers. Celeste Fekete playing his second game, got a sin bin, so good on him for a sin bin early in his career. But suddenly Naufahu Whyte is a very important player for the Roosters. Now, remember, for the Kiwis last year at the Pacific Championship, he was one of the best players. Now he's got a very important role in the Roosters forward pack, and he has gone up from 33 minutes a game last season to 53 minutes per game in his first 2 games of this season. Against the Panthers, 58 minutes, 13 runs at 13.9 meters per run, 30 tackles at 91%. He's 22 years old. So you can point to any young middle forward again. Oh, he's the best young forward in the NRL. I'm probably going to say Naufahu Whyte. And he's building nicely on a very impressive campaign for the Kiwis last year. Also had Bentley Harpe making his debut against the Dragons, played on the wing for the Rabbitohs. And he didn't have a massive impact on the game, but he did his job as a winger for the Rabbitohs. I think, well, according to rugbyleagueproject.org, that was his first game on the wing. So he's usually a fullback for the Rabbitohs in New South Wales Cup. And he played a lot of centre coming through the Roosters system. So the Roosters recruited him from Aotearoa when he was playing junior footy and junior touch in Aotearoa coming from Northland. Long time in the Roosters system, like at least 5 years in the Roosters system before he appeared to take a break, which was probably due to injury. And then he started to appear in the Rabbitohs New South Wales Cup team, and he's just worked his way through that. So he has definitely earned everything he's got now as far as an NRL debut. Curious to see like how he builds on this for the Rabbitohs. Rabbitohs have a few injuries and outs in their backline, so that's presented the opportunity to Bentley Harpe. And like, he's not going to play fullback because they got Jai Gray. So he was a centre, I think, coming up through the Roosters ranks as well. So being able to cover centre and wing will be very important for him at the Rabbitohs. Rabbitohs do also have, like, they don't have a big Kiwi-NRL crew, but they do have Salesi Ata in New South Wales Cup, Otahuhu Jr., and you've got Nazareth Tawa. I think he might be New South Wales Cup edge forward or Jersey Flegg edge forward. He's a Maris Jr. from Auckland. You mentioned the Eels. Eels have very quickly gone from an incredibly fun Kiwi-NRL team to just one of the stinkers. Like, there was that period where they had Dylan Brown from Northland, Whittamu Greg from Northland, Isaiah Papali'i, Te Aratū Jr., Maratini Okori Mangere East Jr., Te Hurinua Twiddle was starting to blossom in their system. That was a real fun time for the Kiwi-NRL vibes. Greg's not playing NRL. Papali'i left, Neokore left, and Dylan Brown's about to leave. They do still have Twiddle, but he's just chilling in Jersey Flegg at the moment. Makahisi Makatoa was doing a good job playing a few games over the past few years. Now he's with the Roosters. So the whole Kiwi-NRL realms at the Eels has changed very quickly, very drastically, and now they're just one of my least favorite Kiwi-NRL clubs. So shout out to them. Dylan Brown going to the Eels, to the Knights, sorry. Obviously, it's next season. So I still find the conversations about how Dylan Brown fits at the Knights very strange because, like, he's playing games this season. The Knights are playing games this season. But I think I talked about it on the bonus podcast, and I'll relay it to here, where the Knights have become one of the biggest recruiters from Aotearoa. That gets a bit weird when players like Stafford, Toa, Simi Sasangi have left the Knights as soon as they start to settle in as NRL players at the Knights. So that just leaves a sour taste for me. And they didn't recruit Leo Thompson from Aotearoa, but they did sign him from the Raiders, who recruited him from rugby in Aotearoa, and now Leo Thompson's leaving. But at least they have Tyron Thompson as twin brothers, so they replace one twin with another. The thing about the Knights that obviously the Aussies won't discuss is that they love Aotearoa. That doesn't necessarily lead to all these players shining in the NRL team for the Knights, but they recruit heavily from Aotearoa. They do it for the women's team. Like Fane Finau's and Otara Jr., who the Knights recruited to enter their women's pipeline. The Knights NRLW team has always had Kiwi Ferns, always had players from Aotearoa. In the men's pipeline, they have, like, every level has a bunch of Kiwi NRL juniors. New South Wales Cup, well, Sebastian Sewer, he's another example. Recruited from Aotearoa, Mount Albert Jr., he's signed to the Dolphins for next season. They have Elijah Salisa Leao Moana, Southern Cross campus, same school as Lekahala Sema. He's a good edge forward in New South Wales Cup. You go to their Jersey Flegg team, now they've got Cullen Gray in the halves, who is also from Northland. Same club as Dylan Brown, Hikarangi Stags Jr., but he played first 15 rugby for Auckland Grammar School, dabbled in a bit of rugby union in Wellington and the Brumbies in Australia. Now he's with the Knights. He's playing in the halves for the Knights jersey flag team. That also has Bailey Carmichael, Tama Kaimoana, Whare Aorere, both of whom are from Te Puke and went to Rotorua Boys High School. You got Hami Loza from De La Salle College. He's in the halves. So both the under-21s and the under-19 teams for the Knights have halves from Aotearoa. You got Sasai Latu in the outside backs of the Knights. He's a Mangere East junior. You've got Xavier Lynch. He's from Christchurch. Can't remember his junior club off the top of my head. Probably Hornby. You got Ezekiel Whangaiti. He's from Christchurch. He's on the bench for the SG ball team every week. Hornby Junior off the top of my head. The Ryder Crosswell is a very good emerging player as well in the halves from Palmerston North, I think. Forgive me if I'm not getting these junior links, just firing right at the moment. But the point is, they have a lot of players from Aotearoa in their system, and they love recruiting youngsters from Aotearoa at every level. So you can say, Newcastle area, great junior farm system. They got, it's the heartland of rugby league. But they recruit a lot of players from Aotearoa. So maybe Aotearoa is the heartland of rugby league because every NRL club's recruiting from Aotearoa at every level. And the Knights, they don't discriminate rugby union, rugby league either. They'll sign pure rugby league juniors. They'll sign pure rugby union juniors. They'll sign the hybrids as well because most youngsters in Aotearoa play both codes. So I'm not sure how relevant that is to the Dylan Brown signing, but it is worth noting that the Knights love youngsters from Aotearoa, men and women. They will recruit men and women from Aotearoa at every level. Now they've just recruited the Aotearoa Kiwis half. Best starting half combination, Jerome Hughes, Dylan Brown. Now they've got Dylan Brown in their ranks. So a lot of rugby league stuff there. Did you have any thoughts on Bailey Bentley Harpe's debut coming against your Dragons? Probably, let's be honest, your Dragons aren't very good. I can't imagine Bentley Harpe made a massive impression on you as a Dragons fan, but were you aware that yet another youngster, yet another player from Northland coming into the NRL?
Yeah, they mentioned him a little bit on commentary as well, which was a tidy reminder. But you had told me ahead of time, so I didn't know to look for him. But he didn't feel like he did much in that game. Yeah, it was a little bit of a strange one, just the way that game went in general, because it was like 60 minutes gone. It looked like the Dragons were just going to roll them and had a nice couple try lead. Rabbitohs were looking already with a bunch of injuries, looking tired, looking gassed, looking like they were going to struggle to finish the game, and then should have ended right there. It would have been nice. It would have been a happy victory for the Dragons. Instead, somehow the script flipped and the Bunnies rolled them in the last 20 and came through to victory. But I didn't feel like there was a lot of above and beyond stuff from Bentley Harpe, other than like just the natural stuff of the ball comes to you, you take a hit up here or there, doing your job within the backline sweeps and whatever. There wasn't really any above and beyond, but at the same time, if you're not getting noticed, it also means you're not making errors. It might mean you didn't score a hat trick, but it also means you didn't drop the ball under you weren't dropping eyeballs or anything like that. So solid enough, I guess. And it's always nice to play in a comeback victory.
He did match up against Tyrell Sloan, which was a bit tricky because Sloan's really fast. But Bentley Harpe, congratulations. Second Kiwi-NRL debutant of the year, 2 rounds in. Let's go football, where big week of all whites footy. When's there? Give me the schedule.
Yeah, so Friday night in Wellington at the Cake Tin. I think it's the Cake. It must be the Cake Tin. You got New Zealand versus Fiji And before that, you also got the other semi-final, which is New Caledonia versus Tahiti. Winners advance to the final, which will be Monday night in Auckland at Eden Park. Interestingly enough, be curious how big of a crowd they can get to Eden Park, because it's probably not going to be a contest football-wise. All Whites have been pretty dominant under the last couple of coaches when it comes to playing against the Oceania teams, largely because they don't take them for granted. They get their best players in and they try to score a bunch of goals, and they often do score a bunch of goals. But in particular, they've been just like, they run rampant when they play against those teams in Aotearoa. So it's a tough one to imagine Fiji, New Caledonia, or Tahiti running them close. But there is, of course, you win these two games, you qualify for the World Cup. And even if you don't win these two games, if you win the first one and get to the final and then lose, there is still an intercontinental playoff spot, which is what the All Whites always used to have to do before they expanded the World Cup, is you go playoff against one of the other close qualifiers, not quite qualifiers from one of the other confederations. Like last time it was against Costa Rica, before that against Peru, against Mexico, against Bahrain once upon a time when they actually won the one. So even if they didn't win the final, which I guess that's not really the way to frame it, because the All Whites are going to be fair about it. The All Whites are going to win these two games, but whichever of the whichever out of New Caledonia and Tahiti wins that semi-final, they're likely to themselves get that. Well, they will get that intercontinental playoff spot instead, which would be pretty amazing. Potentially, that's got a lot to do with why New Caledonia have managed to make. You don't really talk about signings in international football, but they've made a big signing ahead of these games, and that is Joshua Sotirio, ex-Wellington Phoenix forward. Currently went away to play in India for 2 years, never played a single game after he left the Phoenix because he just kept getting injured while he was in India, but has come back, tried to sort of revamp his career a little bit. I think he was with an NPL side, but he signed as a mid-season addition to Sydney FC, reuniting with Ufuk Talai. He was on the bench against the Wellington Phoenix this weekend, but I actually think he was an unused sub. I'm not sure. I don't remember him actually playing, although it was late on a Sunday night. I might have missed it, but I'm pretty sure he's unused sub. But he has apparently some sort of link to New Caledonia, so he has committed himself. Formerly an Australian under-20s, under-23s player once upon a time, he's committed to play for New Caledonia for these games. And yeah, the New Caledonia Tahiti squad's obviously French links. They got a couple players that are based in France. I don't know if they're like diaspora players or if they're locals that moved over. But either way, there's a couple of lower league French-based players. I think New Caledonia actually have a guy randomly who's playing in Israel as well, which seems like not the place you want to be playing football at the moment, but whatever. Yeah, they'll be interesting. Fiji, I think, are quite unlucky here. They should have done a little bit better in their group thing. They finished second in their group, which is why they've been drawn against New Zealand. But they've gone all out. They've planned in like 3 weeks of training camps in New Zealand. They brought in a bunch of New Zealand-based players on top of all their what is usually a mostly local-based squad that Fiji picks. But they brought in a bunch of New Zealanders this race who could, who was good enough to make it, and played friendly games against Eastern Suburbs, against Auckland United, against the Wellington Phoenix reserves. No real coverage of those, but from what I understand, they won all 3 games and didn't concede a goal in any of them, which you'd hope an international team would be able to do that against the preseason club teams, but still, those are good results. Problem for Fiji is they have one superstar player. His name is Roy Krishna, and he tore his ACL about 4 months ago, so he's not available. So Fiji will be without their best player, but they do have some good, solid guys, including a few New Zealand-based players, as I say, who did make the final cut. So all these teams are doing the best they can. They're giving themselves the best chances, but it's New Zealand and Oceania football. We tend to win these games, and we almost always win them pretty comfortably when we're playing them at home. So big prize for the All Whites. Won't quite be qualifying for the World Cup with as much drama and intrigue as they did in 1982 or 2010, but still, you get to go to the World Cup, and we do have a generation of players that is worthy of putting themselves alongside the squads of those two previous golden eras.
Obviously, I'll try to get back to the original question. The schedule. Why aren't they playing at Porirua Park in Wellington? Like that is the
Well, that's a good
that's the
question.
fortress of football in Wellington, Porirua Park, home of the Wellington Phoenix women. So yeah, okay, the All Whites should win both games. Hopefully, they do win both games. What are we looking for with how they're playing their football? Like, is there a flying Kiwi situation that you're keeping track of? Is there a stylistic element of how the all Whites play their football? Give me a detail about All Whites soccer that I would need to keep an eye on.
Well, the last two, well, not one of the windows was split, but the last three international fixtures have all been home games. So I think we got a good glimpse in those ones of what they'll try to do, which will be a relatively simple game plan. They will try to keep possession, but they will also look to be pretty attacking against opponents where they should be able to get away with that. It'll be a little bit interesting to see how they make up the midfield because there have been games where you might there's a couple games where Joe Bell wasn't available, so Alex Ruthe slots in alongside. But arguably their best performance of the Darren Baisley era was when they drew against America, where they actually had Ruthe and Joe Bell playing together in the midfield. So you get two defensive midfielders really setting a screen for the defense. Don't really need that against Fiji, New Caledonia, and Tahiti, though, to be fair. So I think it'll be a little bit more about trying to get creativity, trying to create as many chances for Chris Wood as possible. They'll look to be good from set pieces, all that kind of stuff. And it'll be the usual suspects. And the good thing is a lot of those guys are in pretty good form. Like Chris Wood actually has dipped slightly lately. He's gone 4 games without a goal in the Premier League, which is his longest drought of the entire season so far. But it's also only 4 games. Like it's not even a month's worth of footy. So don't think there's anything to worry about. It's more just a reflection of how good and how consistent he has been all season. And he's been scoring a lot of goals for the All Whites when he plays for them. In fact, him and Elijah Just have scored in each of the last 4 games for the All Whites. So there's actually a record they could tie if either of them scores in both of these next 2 games. No, I think there's Keith Nelson scored in 6 games in a row once upon a time. I think it was him. I broke it down in the email a little bit like last week in one of them, which is the record. But yeah, they could be leveled, probably not by Elijah Just, but he is in contention. More likely for Chris Wood, who's also the penalty taker and the main striker and the form dude and the fella that they try to build around. But like Callum McCallum scored a couple goals recently for his club team. Jesse Randall's been all right. I don't know what kind of minutes he'd get in this, but obviously Logan Rogerson as well. Both of them for Auckland FC have been playing very good football of late. Elijah Just actually had a little bit of an injury, so he only just came back this week, missed the previous 2 weeks, but looked pretty sharp while he was out there for St. Paulton. I watched that game and I thought he certainly didn't look like a fella who was struggling with injury. The one exception is Matt Garbutt, who obviously has not been playing much of anything at all, although Darren Baisley did say he's been getting some reserve team minutes at NSW Raiders, so that's something. It's under 21's football. It's not ideal, but it's at least it's something for him to keep him fit. Marko Stamanic, I suppose, if you want to count him as an attacking player, which in this context he would be, because he's going to be out there pinging passes left, right, and center. He's also struggling for minutes, but I mean, and Ben Waine. Yeah, Ben Waine's not in a very happy situation where he is as well. But there's a lot of players out there who are playing good football, who have been getting goals and assists for their clubs, and will be pretty confident coming into these games as well. And they are on the back of a few big wins in similar types of contests that they've had recently against Vanuatu, against Samoa, against Malaysia. Should prepare the All Whites. They'll know exactly what they're getting into with these games. They'll know exactly what they got to do, and I expect they will pretty comprehensively do that.
Didn't mention Tyler Bindon.
Didn't mention Tyler Bindon, but I probably should have, because I was thinking of the attacking players. But of course, he He's not an attacking player, but he scores goals for Reading. So yeah.
You mentioned everyone else. Like you ran through the whole team of like, oh, this, yeah, whatever. But I want Tyler Bindon. I just want to
Well, I
see
should
more
have said
Tyler Bindon.
Kakache as well, because I think Kakache is someone who's going to be bursting for it. It does have a big impact on how the All Whites attack. But yes, Tyler Bindon as well. Menace from set pieces. Just a menace in general. He's the only one of these guys who scored an overhead kick this season, so he should be on the list of attacking threats as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to trump all you ran through like 100 details. I'm just going to say one, Tyler Bindon. Watch out for Tyler Bindon. He's awesome. He's playing on local territory. He is demanding your eyeballs, probably as a centre back for the All Whites. And I mean, he's probably going to be a starting centre back as well.
He
Football
will be. He
Ferns,
will be.
what's doing with the Football Ferns?
Well, they have a tour coming up in depends how politically correct you want to be, either Chinese Taipei or Taiwan, whichever you want to lean towards, which is very much an extension of the last tour to Costa Rica, where they're playing against a team that is ranked lower than them away from home, but also ranked lower enough that they should really be winning at least one or if not both of these games. However, the first game in Taiwan is it's like a behind closed doors friendly, so it's not going to be broadcast. It'll probably still be for caps. It'll probably still be a real game where they're not going to be making like 30 substitutions rolling off and on throughout. Probably still be functioning as a real game, but it's behind closed doors. It's to allow them to practice things, tactical things a little bit more. Second game will be open and broadcast, I'd imagine. But that does kind of make it another one of these. It's not that it's not a serious tour, it's that it's just not the most serious tour they're going to be going on. It's another one of these ones where they can use it a bit more for development, a bit more for building the team out, which is a strange situation when your coach is an interim and is supposedly that they said they're going to name the head coach after this tour. Again, same thing as last time. There's nothing about what Michael Main is saying or how he's acting that suggests that he doesn't think he can continue to do this job in perpetuity. So imagine that's a pretty, as those odds are getting shorter and shorter by the day that he's just going to continue on as the head coach unless some amazing candidates just applied behind the scenes and they've managed to keep a lid on that and no one knows anything about it yet. But it's looking more like a Michael Main regime, which is off the back of the Costa Rica stuff. Thought there were enough positives to be excited about that prospect. I am still nervous about one or two things though when it comes to like the selection stuff, because this is another tour where there's no CJ Bott, there's no Katie Bowen, no Rebecca Stott, which like if he'd just adequately explained that better, more directly last time, we could at least say, okay, well, they've been rested because they've got club stuff to focus on and we're looking at other players. That's all it has to be. And that is all it has to be. Like that might well be the case. But I still have suspicions over whether there might be some kind of like, whether perhaps the way the last coach left might have rankled a few things, and there was a bit of like player upheaval there. And those are senior players who would have definitely been involved in that. I wonder if there might be a little bit of a slap on the wrist on that. But like I said with the Costa Rica stuff, as long as they come back in, like, okay, if you got to do that behind the scenes, whatever. But as long as they come back into the team, because those are your best players and your best defenders, and you're not going to be a better team without CJ Bott and Katie Bowen in there. But
you also deliberately said that this was not a super duper serious tour. Like it just seems
which is why it would have been super easy to explain. That's what's annoying about it.
It just seems like you're too deep in those mangroves, maybe.
That's which is also why I'm trying not to go deeper. I'm just like, we'll dangle this out there, but I don't want to go so deep as to lose a jandal here. I'm just going to sort of wade through the mud and say this possibility hasn't been extinguished yet, like it could have been.
This to me, this is classic Black Caps. Black Caps tour Sri Lanka, Black Caps, random ODI T20 series each summer. You just go deeper into your player pool. Like, it doesn't really. I don't see it as hugely important. Seems like Michael Main's going to be the coach moving forward. That's all good. You seem to identify the yuckiness with New Zealand football more than me, so that's just two different perspectives. But like, who's in the
Yeah.
squad? Tell me about the squad. I don't care about you. Care a lot more about that peripheral stuff. I don't give a shit. I just want to know squad selection, who's in, who's out, um, who to watch out for.
Um, yeah, well, there's at least the Black Caps explain their absences, arguably more than they need to as well. They'll go in to give absences for guys who maybe wouldn't have even been picked, but just be nice. But whether that's a Michael Main communication issue or whether that's just because it's the Football Ferns outside of a major tournament and no one's asking, that also might be the thing. Like, there's no one's doing that interview to figure it out. Um, so yeah, we'll dangle that one out there, but we'll move on and say the squad is pretty similar to last time, except they've Finn Sim and Macy Fraser. There's a couple of injuries as well. Like Grace Jale has just come back from injury, so they're not risking her. Mackenzie Barry is also injured. Don't know if they're starting players in the system they were playing last time though. So I don't know if that is a huge one, but Macy Fraser certainly is, because Macy Fraser just started a game, first game of the season for Utah Royals. She was in the starting lineup in the NWSL, one of the toughest leagues on the planet, and extremely hard to get into as an international player, especially a relatively young international player. So she's done brilliant there to get that role, which was pretty much forecast through preseason as well. Like the stuff her coach was saying, the lineups they were picking, it seemed like she was getting in the first 11 sort of sides a lot more often, and the coach was saying nice stuff. So it was all that's all been flowing very nicely for Macy Fraser, but she does need to like trying to lock down that spot, and she missed a lot of time last year with ankle injuries. So I think they're just being safe and not picking her, but I do worry about that because she was so influential in the last tour where it was like there was a notable difference between the Football Ferns without Macy Fraser on the pitch, which was the Football Ferns we're used to that can't create chances or score goals, and then the Football Ferns with Macy Fraser who were creating chances and scoring goals. And probably their second best player, attacking wise, second most influential player on that Costa Rica series was Indy Riley, who's playing as a wingback, but as a wingback getting an opportunity to attack a whole lot. And that's consistent with how she's been playing for Crystal Palace in England as well. But she missed the most recent Crystal Palace game with injury. There's still 2 weeks until they go to Chinese Taipei, so time for her to recover. But if she has some lingering issue and she's missing and Macy Fraser is missing, I I think they're more reliant on a couple of those key attackers than they're maybe going to admit. So I have some, especially when like because maybe Millie Clegg could bail you out a little bit, except Millie Clegg's hardly played any football for 12 months either, and she's still in preseason and for a Canadian club where she's on loan. So I have significant reservations there, and I think there were one or two players who maybe could have been selected instead to help build, like Maggie Jenkins as someone scoring goals in Turkey could have been a help. They have recalled Jana Radosavljevic, which I was surprised about. She always seems to be like the forgotten player who gets ignored in these ones, but she's playing quite well in Portugal at the moment. So I like that. I like that selection. Maybe with Devon Jackson, it was a case of she just returned from a significant injury. She like fractured a bone in her face against the Phoenix, actually playing for Newcastle at the start of the year. She missed a couple months. She's only been back the last 2 weeks. She scored on the weekend actually for Newcastle. Maybe that was a case of like not recovering in time. Emma Main might have been someone else in contention. There's a few other players where it's like even Chiara Berselli as a sort of speedy youngster will give you some good energy, let alone some of the ones who have Football Ferns experience who haven't been getting picked these last two squads, like Gabby Rennie most notably. Ava Collins would be another one. Like there's a lot of good attackers that we got, and you can only fit so many in a squad, so you got to make some decisions there, and those decisions have been made. But I do worry about how reliant they are on one or two players there, and with those one or two players aren't playing, you might get stretched a little bit more. But I guess the game against Chinese Taipei is probably the best time to figure that out and test it.
But
I'm thinking
again,
a little bit more bigger picture than that
yeah,
tour
like
when I say those things. But yeah,
you deliberately said this is not the most serious tour. So like to me, it just seems like they're just building out the other attacking options. Like they're just giving other people a go. There's situations with, we know New Zealand football, All Whites, Football Ferns, they have to uh, deal with the individual situation at different clubs, injuries, form. Like, you can't just select your best squad, your best team every single time. To like, I don't know what you're worried about. Like, these are games in which they will test out other attacking players. They will need to give opportunities to other players. But I'm only saying that because, again, you said this is not the most serious tour. So it's not like they're going to Spain and they're playing Spain and they have to try to compete. Like, this is just another little tour in which they build out their depth. Different players get an opportunity. Like, this is New Zealand football in 2025 when you got a lot of players around the world, and just seems like the Football Ferns are just trying to build out their competitive depth and work with the professional clubs around the world and the different situations there. You also mentioned Jesse Randall, he's in the All White squad, and he was pretty impressive watching him closely for Auckland FC in the A-League. Of course, they had a draw. I'm coming at this from another angle as well, because there was a bit of disappointment there for Auckland FC at home, conceding a late equaliser.
Second
Headlines,
home game in a row, they've done that too.
there you go. Headlines, oh, they drop points, like all this stuff. They're top of the table. They're the best team. 20 games into an A-League season. Like, it's not going to be perfect. They're not going to win every game. They're not just going to steamroll all the opposition and keep rocking and rolling. Yes, it was against the Mariners, but again, as I've kind of observed, there's a lot of different guys getting a lot of game time at Auckland FC, a lot of different combinations being used, players coming in and out with injury. These little mishaps happen. They've had 3 draws in their last 5 games. They're not losing these games. Right? Like, I don't, like, obviously the Phoenix fans, they'll poke fun at Auckland FC conceding a late equaliser. Again, the headlines, they carry this negative tinge. Auckland FC drop points at Mount Smart, whatever. All right. They're 12, 6 and 2, 42 points, top of the league. They've still only conceded 20 goals. They're just grinding through an A-League season, and it's like, it's not the longest season in the footballing world, but you're playing at least 20 games because they've all played 20 games. How many more games to go off the top of your head?
Yeah, 7 or 8, something like that.
Yeah, like this is the dark period of an A-League season.
Yeah.
I'd expect them to fine tune towards finals footy and push towards winning the A-League championship. But yes, I'd like Auckland FC to win these games, dominate, play their best footy. You can't play your perfect footy game every single round. And when Auckland FC slip up, at least recently, they're drawing. Like, okay, that's terrible. If that's terrible, the standard for Auckland FC is pretty awesome. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm just on this like alternative footballing streak over the last 30 minutes. I don't know, but where do you sit with that?
Yeah, well, I don't have to disagree with you on this one because that was pretty much my thoughts too. Like, I was disappointed they didn't beat Central Coast because I'd said before I thought they had actually thrashed them. I thought this was going to be a bounce back game. But Central Coast have some class players in there. It's like they've lost a lot of the players who won their last 2 championships with them, but they still have a few. Like Brian Keltec was that centre back in that game. You know, that's not going to be easy at any point. They played quite well. The 2 goals Auckland conceded were awful. Like they were both very sloppy ones, uncharacteristic, but also who wasn't there? Nando Panika wasn't there. That's probably a significant factor in that. Dan Hall returning from a long injury break as well. His first game back, I thought he was all right. He certainly wasn't to blame for either of the goals they conceded, but there might be some rustiness with their partnership because I don't think he would have played with Tommy Smith a whole lot as a centre back pairing. And as far as the fact that certainly thought they should have, once they got 1-0 up, they should have been able to get 2-0 up at some stage. But if you're being a little bit less, what's the word? A little bit less sort of you're not putting your chances away in the same way that you might be expecting yourselves to if you're not quite hitting those standards that you've set in recent weeks. Well, also who wasn't playing there was Max Mata, and Max Mata has been so efficient for them when he's been in the starting lineup. Like his goals and assists per 90 minutes stat is crazy. He's way up there. Um, and yeah, he's out with a calf injury at the moment, which I also wonder sneakily whether Darren Bazley might have picked Max Mata ahead of Ben Waine for the All Whites had he been available. Because I actually think on form, he should have. I think Max Mata was playing better football than Ben Waine, who's hardly playing any football for Mansfield Town. So that was a decision he got to avoid because of unfortunate timing of Mata's injury. But I think Auckland FC is seeing a little bit of that. Well, that looks like maybe as well for them too. But also like, yeah, and Verstrato as well. Like the guy you might have wanted to bring on when you go 2-1 up to close out the game. Well, he's not available because he was also suspended. So they were working through a few different options. They were working without a couple of the regulars who have set the tone for so many of their good performances. They did slip up and concede another late equalizer at Mount Smart, but also they, like you say, didn't lose either of those games, and they didn't lose when they went down to 10 men against Newcastle Jets in between away from home either. So if these are your bad performances and you're still grinding out 3 points from 3 games, staying more than 3 points clear at the top as well. I think they're 4 points clear, but have a game in hand on Western United. Like they're cruising towards the minor premiership.
And I was really impressed with Randall. Like he had the run in behind to set up one of the goals, but he had some silky touches, just one touch, laying it off for Mahi. Because I haven't seen a lot of Randall, but I mean, he's got a bit of flair to doing the really hard Mahi as well, like bursting onto the ball, rugged defense. I was pretty impressed with Randall, and he's just another youngster getting game time for Auckland FC, which is an underrated element of their excellent first up season.
Yeah, and the thing to know about Randall is when he was with Wellington Olympic a couple of years ago when they won the National League, like he was the leading assist maker in the entire National League that season. So he is a speedy winger. He's going to run in behind and try score goals, but he sets them up as well. Like he's got vision, he's got passing too.
If Auckland FC's draw was just, I'm just putting it as a long season result. Like you have your ups and downs. They're down as a draw, so all good. Wellington Phoenix also had a draw against Sydney FC. Just how would you describe this draw?
Well, I think it was if Auckland FC's was a steady as you go kind of thing, then the Phoenix to get a draw away to Sydney FC is a big positive. That's a big step up for them to be able to get a result like that. And ironically, for all the critique about them being too defensive, it's actually when they play quite defensive like this, particularly in away games, when they're kind of better. Like they were certainly against Sydney. They nullified what Sydney FC were doing pretty well. Didn't make for a very entertaining game, but they had little flashes in there. Like the first sort of 30 minutes, it looked like here's a team that's just going to lump long balls over the top when they get it and ask Costa to chase it, which is like, you've been doing a lot of this that doesn't work. Like it's not working here either. But then they just figured a couple of things out, got a little bit more possession in the other half, and Chico Heraldez, nice ball through to Costa Barbarouses, stays on side, scores, equalizes, and just getting that goal to tie the game back up after they'd conceded a sloppy one early on, as they seem to be doing a way too often this season. They were right after that. Like Chiefy City felt like they had the potential to go on and win that game. That felt like a step too far, but I certainly felt like they were good value for a draw. And I think when was it that Hughes went off? 72 minutes. So it was only the last 20 minutes there, but they had to fight through a little bit of defensive upheaval there as well when your centre backs isn't able to complete the game due to just picking up a knock along the way. Corbin Piper comes on, finishes the job. It was a good enough performance from them, and I'd say like. Yeah, it's not quite like Warriors between Vegas and Mount Smart difference where you can, because I think with the Phoenix, the effort has generally been there. Even in the Auckland FC hiding, there were phases within that game where they just shot themselves in the foot. It's like there was that spell there when they conceded 3 goals in a short space of time prior to halftime, which ruined the whole game for them. But a lot of that second half was quite competitive even then in that game. Like they've generally had the effort and the mostly the intensity required, not always the confidence and the like playing on the front foot and taking the right kind of risk stuff though. Um, but the application has been there. It was nice for them to get a little bit of reward for that because like it's not that well, I'd say it doesn't feel like they've been that far off, but actually it has. In the last few weeks, since the Derby game, it's felt like they've drifted further and further. Start of the season didn't feel like they were that far off where they wanted to be. More recently, it has. So it was good to see. Yeah, it was a nice result for them away from home, and hopefully they can kick on and actually win something in New Zealand at some point this season.
The Wellington Phoenix women had a 2-1 loss, obviously, in Australia against Sydney FC. I say obviously because they usually lose in Australia. I don't think the Wellington Phoenix women are going to play finals footy. Are you still holding on to the possibility that the Wellington Phoenix women can play finals footy?
The possibility, absolutely. I got to check the see if I can find the. I follow too many
Well,
things
like
here, but
anything is possible, but I'm predicting they will not make the finals. So what's
they
your
are
prediction?
they are 2 points off the finals with I think three, maybe four games to go. They're through 2 points off of the top six. So I still think they can. Prediction after losing away in Sydney, it makes it a lot harder to say yes, but I'll give them a 60-40 chance. I'll go the overs on that. If you want to say no, I'll say yes just to keep the podcast interesting. I think they got a chance, especially because let me check how many. Seeing as they always lose 2-1 or 1-0 away from home, no matter what happens, even in a really good performance against Sydney. I thought it was a really good performance against Sydney in this game, but they concede from their only 2 shots on target that Sydney had, including one right at the end when after they'd been reduced to 10 didn't help. But
But you,
they're
I'm sure
one,
you're going to
two,
bring
three of
up
their
some.
last three of their
Yeah,
last 4 games are at home.
right. So I'm
Pororo
sure you're going to
Park,
bring
the
up some extra
fortress.
details, some schedule, like how this could be possible. Like I don't have any of that information. I don't care. I'm saying the Wellington Phoenix women are not a finals A League team. That is my. I guess I've kind of been building to that all season, and especially recent weeks because I've noticed you kind of keeping that flame flickering. I just don't think they're a finals team. And again, so you're going to say 3 out of their 4 games at Porirua Park, the fortress that is Porirua Park. Big respect to Porirua Park, the best football stadium in Wellington, second best stadium, ground, arena in Wellington behind the Basin Reserve. That does make me think. It does make me ponder the Wellington Phoenix women possibly getting into finals. Give me their opponent.
Right. Well, the remaining matches home to Central Coast, who are sixth, so they could be in the top six next week if they win that game. Then home to Melbourne City, which is a frisky one because even at home that's hard for them to
Yeah,
beat
yeah,
that
yeah.
team. Don't think they've ever beaten Melbourne City. Away to Canberra, another team just above them on the table. And that is a place they have won before, going to Canberra. They have got results there. Probably the most Wellington-esque part of Australia. So, it's the respective capitals and everything. And then home to Western United to finish, who are fourth. So they're pretty much all 4 of these games are against teams above them currently on the table. But 3 of those teams are between fourth and seventh, where it's like, especially at home, they can win those games. I'm not saying they will win those games, but they can. They're capable of it. So the remaining draw isn't too bad as far as what they could hope for or expect of the over the final month of the season. But you got to put some chances away if they're gonna make it happen. They've been better at doing that in those home games. They do have a decent home record this season, but I mean, we saw it pretty glaringly away to Sydney FC, where it's like they were the better team for most of that game. Didn't help that they got a red card. It was Tiana Jaber with like 15 minutes to go, and sort of spoiled the momentum heading towards the finish line there. But they'd done enough to that point already to have felt like they should have been ahead, and Paul Temple called it an injustice afterwards, which is what a coach should be saying to keep his team's heads up. But it felt that way, but also it's not really injustice if the way you're losing is the same way that you keep losing every time you play away from home. It's not really, it actually is more of a trend than anything else. But as I say, they've been a little bit better, a little bit more clinical when it comes to playing those games at home at the Fortress of Pororoa Park. So hopefully that's the tipping point for them. I'm still, yeah, I'm still giving them that 60-40 chance.
I'm going to stick to my beliefs here, my intuition. I'm going to say they will not make finals. Yeah, it is interesting because Mariners, Canberra Raiders, Canberra United, they're on the cusp. Do have a couple of Uniteds here. It's not all just FCs
Yeah.
in the women's competition. And shout out to Newcastle Jets sticking with the no FC there. So they do have two games that will dictate finals footy against the Mariners, against Canberra. But yeah, having not watched them recently, I still believe, from what I've seen this season, that the Wellington Phoenix women are not a finals team. That is based on the still kind of wishy-washy style of play and not necessarily resolute defense. And the wishy-washy style of play leads to a lot of turnovers, which I still believe challenges their defense a lot. Hard and fast question: who is the best player for the Wellington Phoenix women this season?
Ooh. It's sort of like first equal. But yeah, if you push me for one, I think I'm ready to say that Annalie Longo's gone ahead of Maya McCutcheon in the performance tag. So I'm going with Longo, who's been superb and really feels like the one who is keeping the team's heads up, keeping the efforts and application high with just her own insane work rate, creating so many chances. She's the like did she set up she might have set up the goal for Manai Elliott on the weekend even. So continuing to like create good stuff for them, and also being so important for them at the beginning of their possessions as well as the end of the possession. She's been fantastic. Pretty much brought that to the Football Ferns last tour as well. So I expect that as another crossover with the Fernies and Chinese Taipei, as you'll probably see a fair bit of Only Longo in the midfield.
Let's finish with a bit of Plunket Shield. We have wins for Otago and Wellington. Northern Districts had a draw with Auckland. So that takes Wellington top of the table. They go ahead of Northern Districts. I think we've got 2 games to play. And Otago's win was their first win of the season, so they go ahead of Auckland. Auckland is bottom of the table. A lot of dudes scored runs, and a lot of spinners took wickets. So that's another reinforcement of our observation that late in the summer, Aotearoa gets a bit spinny. It's not just like, oh, they're playing at Bay Oval. Oh, they're playing at Seddon Park. Oh, they're playing at Eden Park out at Oval. So that's more conducive with a bit of spin. No, it's everywhere. Everywhere in Aotearoa at this time of year, as long as it hasn't been a wet summer, it gets very spinny. So this week in Auckland, there was a Jeet Raval, 8 wickets in the match. 3 wickets in the first innings, 5 wickets in the second innings. Twice, Jeet Raval bowled an Auckland batter around the legs with his leggies. Another leggy, Addy Ashok, 6 wickets in the first innings there. And then we go to Rangiora, where Wellington defeated Canterbury in the Canterbury region. Rippon and McConchy took a couple wickets in the first innings. Then it was actually Liam Dudding who took 4 wickets in the second innings, and Wellington didn't even use a spinner in that game. But later on in the game, Peter Younghusband took 4 wickets to wrap up the tail to seal the win, and Logan Van Beek took a fifer. Otago's win over Central Districts in Alexandra, they had Dale Phillips took a couple wickets. Jaden Lennox took fifer and finished with 6 wickets in the match. We had Central Districts using 3 spinners, Angus Shaw, Brad Schmullian as well, and then Dean Foxcroft. 4 wickets to ensure victory for Otago over Central Districts. So there's the straight-up spinners like Eddie Ashok, Jaden Lennox, Peter Younghusband, but then you've also got the part-timers, Jet Raval, Henry Cooper bowled spin as well. Northern Districts also had Rohit Gulati, the lefty. He was busy. Auckland, a bunch of spinners. Ashok, Dalport, Sid Dixit, and William O'Donnell all bowled spin overs. Canterbury, they lose Ish Sodhi to the Black Caps. They've still got 3 spinners, Rippon, McConchy, and Matt Boyle. And Wellington had Younghusband and Jesse Tashkoff bowling spin. Otago, Foxcroft, Phillips, Central Districts, Lennox, Shaw, Schmullian. Spin is a major factor in the Plunket Shield at this time of year. But you also had seamers taking wickets, and the leading wicket takers, Logan Van Beek, Peter Younghusband, Jared Mackay, Hugeline, Hampton, Dudding, Muller, McKenzie, Ray, they're all seamers. So seamers are still busy in the Plunket Shield. Shout out to Logan Van Beek. He's got the most wickets at an average of 23. So great season for Logan Van Beek with the ball. Still watching this battle at the top of the run scorer charts. We got Nick Kelly versus Reese Muriu. So Kelly's got 735 runs, 4 centuries, 150. Reese Muriu has 687 runs, averaging 85, 2 centuries, which one was a double century and 3 50s. Here is one of my little trivia. I was about to say trick question, but that gives it away. Who is the leading run scorer for Central Districts?
The Central Districts. So too obvious to say. You said almost trick question, so it's probably too obvious to say Tom Bruce. Might be old mate Clarkson at this point. He's got a couple hundreds in a row, doesn't he?
Josh Clarkson does have 200s in back-to-back games, and he is tied for the most centuries for Central Districts this season on 2. But it's not Josh Clarkson.
And it's not Tom Bruce?
It's definitely not Tom Bruce.
Dane Cleaver.
It is Dane Cleaver. He has 611 runs. So he is one of 3 batters with over 600 runs, averaging 122, 2 centuries, 4 50s. Let me get a little form check for Dane Cleaver. Last 2 games of Plunket Shield, 115, 83, 98. That's Dane Cleaver. He's doing well in the Plunket Shield. We got to go down to Canterbury because they also have a little funky situation there. If I was to list these scores, I want you to guess which batter is responsible for these scores. 46 not out, 103. This is the last 5 games they've played. Their last 5 games of cricket. 46 not out, 103 not out, 52, 52, 70, 171 not out.
Well, I can do that one because I know the 171 not out was in almost chasing down 500 to win in the 4th innings for Canterbury. That'll be Mr. Henry Nichols.
That is the one and only Henry Nicholls, legend of New Zealand cricket, who, let's get him back in the Black Caps.
Hey,
I mean, seriously, like,
if he hadn't just been dropped by the Black Caps, that amount of runs, that consistency of scoring should
well,
have him back in the Black Caps.
he spent most of the summer injured. So he got dropped. He did tour Sri Lanka, but then he came back and he was injured. So he has been out injured, but he's come. I'm going to say he didn't get dropped. I'm going to say he's come back from injury with, a lot of runs for Henry Nicholls. And in the Plunket Shield, 2 centuries, 2 50s in 5 innings.
Decent.
Yeah, it's not quite Chad Bowes, though, who just hit another century and has a Plunket Shield strike rate of 105 in 6 innings. And he hit a double century for Canterbury in the Ford Trophy with a strike rate over 100 as well. So Chad Bowes just loves to whack it. Someone I am tracking is Cameron Paul for Canterbury. He's now played 3 Plunket Shield games and he's got 12 wickets, averaging 25. Didn't play any Ford Trophy, I don't believe. He's 20 years old, same Darfield club as Zach Folks. And no, he did play 1 Ford Trophy game, but he's in his 3 Ford Trophy games, he's got 5 wickets, averaging 14.8. 3 Plunket Shield games, he's got 12 wickets, averaging 25. 20 years old. Next up, young Seamer from Canterbury, who has played Plunket Shield and Ford Trophy, unlike Matt Rowe, who was we were talking a lot about heading into the season because he had a contract. But Cameron Paul is doing more in domestic cricket right now. So you got to learn about Cameron Paul. You got any questions or hot pockets you want to hit?
Well, while we're talking about Black Caps recalls, maybe Jeet Raval ought to be in that conversation as well. If he's suddenly wicket taking leg spinner, that stuff, like those were some good highlights. That's some good entertainment watching Jeet Raval ripping around. I also noticed the clip of was it Michael Ray, last wicket to fall for Canterbury, like I think like 18, 17 runs short or something like that from chasing down 500, and he was a statue for like 10 full seconds. He didn't move. He was in disbelief that I think he chop it on, or it had bowled off his pads or something like that, and it was final wicket with Henry Nicholls 171 not out at the other end. He could have added to that, but yeah, some good stuff happening. That was a great round of Plunket Shield cricket, that one.
I mean, respectfully to Michael Ray, he definitely didn't chop it on. Well, it didn't look like he chopped it on. It didn't look like it hit his pad. It looked like it went straight through.
Just clean.
Yeah.
It's almost worse.
Jeet Raval, not only did he take 8 wickets in the match, celebrations, and also it was hard to actually dissect what he was saying to Eddie Ashok. But let's just say he had some words for Eddie Ashok. Now, I think they are both suburbs New Lynn cricketers in Auckland. So I don't think it was like full of hatred. I don't think many Kiwi cricketers are going to say stuff full of hatred in that situation. But he did say some stuff very loud and very directly to Ashok when he dismissed him, caught him bowled. And that's Jeet Raval, who's averaging 55 with the bat and 8 with the ball.
Those are some numbers.
That's 8.
That's Stephen Adams plus Alperen Singh. Good numbers.
And he has bowled in 3 innings. So it's not like he just bowled in the 1 innings, got the 5-3, obviously bowled in both innings against Auckland, but he's bowled 3 innings, 26 overs, 8 wickets at 2.4 RPO. So he's been very economical for Northern Districts as well. Henry Cooper hit a massive century. Barrett Popley got some runs for Northern Districts against Auckland. Obviously, they're playing at Eden Park Outer Oval, so the runs were to be had in that game. because Cam Fletcher got a big old century as well, 132 not out. And Dixit got 74. Simon King got 65 for Auckland as well. What else do we have? What else do I want to say? Sam Mycock, he's someone to watch out for. He's got 250s in 6 innings for Wellington. Another all-rounder to watch out for. Well, 2. Shout out to Peter Younghusband because he is averaging 28 with the bat and 31 with the ball. So he's having a very solid all-round season for Wellington. And obviously Logan Van Beek, also a fantastic all-rounder, averaging 25 with the bat, 23 with the ball. A deep cut that I have been tracking all summer long is Muhammad Abbas. Now, his batting hasn't been fantastic in the Plunket Shield. He's got 150 in 12 innings, but lefty seamer. Let me check how often he's been bowling. So he's a lefty seamer for Wellington with a first-class batting average of 37, one-day batting average of 35, and he is bowled in 7 consecutive games and 9 consecutive innings. In the Plunket Shield, he's got 6 wickets, averaging 17. Now, again, this is a lefty seamer who is an awesome batter. And that's a very interesting skill set for New Zealand cricket, to have an emerging all-rounder who bowls lefty seam and is pretty efficient with his lefty seam this summer. And that will probably wrap up our Plunket Shield. Next round of games starts on Friday. Northern Districts versus Wellington, top of the table battle. Canterbury hosting CD, Otago hosting Auckland. Wellington is hosting that game against Northern Districts. So that'll be very fun to watch out for. Obviously, Bevan Jacobs now in the IPL, so he wraps up his debut Plunket Shield season with 476 runs, averaging 59, 1 century, 3 50s. That is the T20 superstar, who's averaging 49 in his first season of Plunket Shield batting. Best youngsters, obviously, Reece Mariu, competing for the leading run scorer spot. Then we got Bevan Jacobs, who is currently 5th for runs, knowing that he probably won't bat again. Max Chu, Curtis Heafy. Thorne Parks has also got 350s, averaging 36 this season. Like what he's doing in the middle order for Otago. Best young bowlers. There's not many. Ashok, averaging 31 with his 15 wickets. Matt Fisher's still got a great 14 wickets, averaging 17.7, but he hasn't played recently. But he was very efficient earlier in the season. And Christian Clark still takes wickets, 13 wickets, but he's averaging 41. And then you get to Cameron Paul. So shout out to Cameron Paul. Watch out for Cameron Paul. But it's good to see who's the best spinner. It's Peter Younghusband, then it's Addy Ashok. So Ashok's doing some good stuff with his leggies for Auckland. And that wraps up our podcast. Busy times, so we do have the Monster podcast going. Hopefully we can just keep grinding, keep our heads above water until the sporting schedule finds a bit of sanity, because it's pretty crazy at the moment. But that's just how it is. Just how it is entering the end of March here in Aotearoa. We'll be back on Thursday with our bonus podcast for the folks on Patreon and Substack. So make sure you support us if you can. Otherwise, big up yourself. We appreciate you. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Chur.